In Outpost, each player commands a colony on a distant planet. Players build and expand their rival colonies by purchasing factories, operating them with human colonists or robots to produce resources, and using these resources to purchase upgrades to make their colonies more efficient and successful. Victory points are accumulated by these purchases, and the game ends when at least one player has accumulated 75 or more victory points. Player with the most victory points win and is chosen to manage the overall development of the planet. Well, the first thing you guys are going to notice is there's no board. Yes, it's a board game, but no board. So, starting off with, there are colony upgrade cards. So right here, we have the colony upgrade cards. There are going to be 4 of these on offer on any given round. That's going to match the player count. We're playing a 4-player game, ergo. There's going to be 4 of these on offer. They range from 1 through 13, so there are obviously some that are going to be off camera. As they come out, we will make them available for everyone to see. Also, in a 4-player game, there are going to be 3 of each one, so there will be 3 heavy equipment, 3 nodules, etc., etc. That's going to be based on player count as well. Then there are production cards, and those production cards out here, think of them as cash, and depending on which factory will produce different production cards, and those production cards have a different actual value. So you'll see down here the average value of a given production card. And for instance, a starting hand minus that would look something along the lines of this. So the ore factories will produce ore cards, water factories will produce water cards, all right? And they have various values that range various amounts. So for instance, the ore cards have a range of 1 to 5 on them, whereas the water cards have a range of 4 to 10. So the amount of money that they produce, if you will, is going to vary, and as you upgrade, those are going to be worth more and more. So that is the production cards. There are also these mega cards. In these mega cards, this is a mega water. There's mega water, there's mega titanium, and there's mega new chemicals. And what these essentially are is 4 of a given type with a slightly higher than average card. So for instance, the water cards have an average value of 4, so drawing here on average would get you 28 credits, or 28 production, if you will. Whereas the mega production has a slightly higher here at 30, as you can see there, okay, if that makes sense. So, off-board, we have various factories. We have ore factories, water factories, titanium factories. We have research here, factories, and then new chemical factories, as well as some other special factories that are going to come into play as the game advances along. There are also these little chits, which are colonists and robots. More on those later as well. And you can see we have our Jenga tower over there with 3 dice. Thank you, Vanna. So there's a 4-sided, a 10-sided, and a 12-sided die. There is also a 6-sided, which we added, but that's going to be for late game, so we don't have to roll 100 times. It'll make sense as we go along. Then over in the player tableaus, as you guys kind of saw, there is a player board to start with. It has tracks for victory points all the way up. Again, the trigger for the end of the game being 75 points. Then down below it, there is a hand limit. Everyone starts at a hand limit of 10 cards, hence why we are using the card racks today. And down below that is our colony support limit. This is how many colonists you can have in your colony at any given time. Everyone's going to start with 2 ore factories and 1 water factory. Both are, or all 3 are manned by colonists, as you can see. So I'm already 3/5 of the way to my limit. Everyone's also going to start with their starting production hand of cards. So the first round, players get double production. So everyone starts with 2 ore and 1 water factory manned. So that means normally you would get 2 and 1 at the beginning of the game. You're going to get 4 and 2, for instance, like so. All right. Now, because this is the first time we're streaming Outpost, we're choosing not to play with the Kicker expansion that comes in the 20th anniversary edition, with the Stronghold Games edition, which is the one that we're playing with here. So, how do you play the game? Well, Outpost is played over an indeterminate number of rounds, with the goal being score the most victory points. We're going to be vying for these colony upgrade cards that are going to allow players to build better and better factories as the game goes along, which to get them higher and higher production cards, which have victory points, which all in the goal of getting victory points. Again, the goal being that 75-point mark. At 75 points, the game ends. Whoever has the most victory points wins. Now, each round is divided into the same 6 phases, and those 6 phases are all listed over here on our player board. However, I gotta be honest, they're really broken down into a series of buckets to where a couple of phases go together just naturally, and it makes more sense to explain it that way, so that's what we're gonna do. The first bucket is phase 1 and 2, determine player order, and replace the purchase colony upgrade card. So at any given time, there's going to be a total of 4 colony upgrades as such, as you can see here, all right? If any of these get auctioned off, let's say this one and this one gets auctioned off, we're going to determine player order, and then we're going to refill the offer, as you can see out there. That's phases 1 and 2. Phases 3 and 4 is we're going to distribute and discard excess production cards. So draw to your whatever you produce, and if you're over your hand limit, then discard. Pretty simple. Phase 5 is the meat of the game, which is basically performing player turns. That's going to be broken down into a couple of sub-steps. And then finally, phase 6, check for victory. And I'm sure we're going to make the joke early on, has anybody won, etc., etc. All right. So let's go through these a little bit more in detail. Phase 1 and 2, determining player order and replacing purchase colony upgrade cards. So first and foremost, we're going to distribute the turn order cards based upon the most victory points, meaning whoever has the most victory points is going to be first. Whoever has the least is going to go last. If they're tied, the highest total face value of upgrade cards and special factories. So you'll notice that some of these, every one of these special upgrade cards, or the upgrade cards, have victory points on them, and some of these will get replaced by other factories as such. And you'll notice that the factories themselves have the same amount of victory points. So it says after purchasing, replace this card with the factory. So that would be worth 2 points, 3 points, and these factories worth 1 apiece. You'll keep track of your victory points here, and so everyone will do that. So you're in charge of your own victory points. Whoever has the most is first, going all the way down to whoever's last, with the tiebreaker being these and these. Whoever has the most victory points there. Sorry, total face value of the upgrade cards, meaning if I've spent 40, 50, there you go, I've spent a total of 170, not counting these down here, if that makes sense. If still tied, roll a die. There you go. The second thing is refilling the upgrade cards. So the upgrade cards allow for building and purchasing of better factories, as well as either giving important discounts on future upgrades and or special rule breakers for the player that owns them. How many are on offer? How many players are there? Pretty simple. Depending on which era we're in, and again, these being Era 1 cards, these being Era 2 cards, these being Era 3 cards, is going to dictate what die we're going to roll. We're going to roll a D4 until somebody reaches 10 points. And whatever the number is, we're going to put out that number to a limit of 2 of a type. So you'll notice there are 2 number 1s out here. So we cannot put out any more value number 1s or any more data libraries. If we were to roll a 3 to fill in that space, for instance, like so, we would put a 3 out there. However, if all the 3s were already out, then we would go down. We would then place a 2 if there's a 2 available, etc., etc. But if going back to that example of there being 2 1s out here, if we were to roll a 1 in that case, or there is nothing lower than that, then we would re-roll until we reach a number that we can put out here, okay? Era 2, as I said, begins at 10 victory points. Era 3 begins based on player count, okay? So the Era 3 cards will only come out in a 4-player game When somebody has reached 40 or more victory points in a turn, then we will start rolling the D12, suppose the D10 for the era 2. Any questions on that?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Moving on to phase 3 and 4, which is distribute and discard excess production cards. Okay. So we're going to take a look at my tableau again for this part of it. Each player, technically in turn order. More often than not, this is not going to matter. But in turn order, whatever is manned, they're going to get one of each of those production cards. So what does that mean? Really simple. I have 2 manned ore factories and 1 manned water factory. I would draw these 3 cards. The values, again, have a range on them, and I would here obviously need to learn to draw better if that were my draw. Okay. However, if in somehow, some way, let's say I purchased another water factory, but it is unmanned. In that case, I will flip this over to show that it is unmanned. It does not count for my victory points, nor will I draw a card for that factory. All right. There are certain factories, as we go along, that will have this little X on it. Means doesn't need to be manned, or woo-manned, as it were. It does not need anybody to be able to draw the card. So in that case, I would then draw one of these research cards as seen as such. If a player would draw 4 or more of a type, so for instance, if, indulge me, and let's say all of these water factories were actually manned. So here I have 5 water factories, and let's say all of those were manned. I have 2 choices. I could either draw 4 water cards, so as such, well, I'm sorry, I could draw 5 water cards, or I could draw 1 water card and a mega water, and the mega water, those are all the same value. That's why they're all face up. So that's worth 30. Or, no, actually, those are my 2 options. There you go. That's it. Okay, so whenever you draw 4 or more, you have the option to choose a mega water or mega whatever it is, whether it's water, titanium, or new chemicals. If I have a hand already, and I should also point out that the mega cards count as 4. So you'll see if this were my hand, I had 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. My hand limit is 10. I would then be able to draw the extra cards, but then at the end of that, I have to discard to my hand limit. So I am allowed to momentarily have more cards, but then I have to immediately discard down. Okay? Any questions on that?
Nope.
Okay. All right, moving on. That's phases 3 and 4, distribute and discard production cards. The next phase, this is the meat of the game, which is perform player actions. In turn order, players can perform the following actions. They can bid on upgrade cards. So if I am the first player, let's say here, then on my turn, I could put any of these up for auction. So if I choose to put this one up for auction as such, I choose any of them. If I choose this, the minimum bid is the face value, i.e. $25. It's done on the honor system, meaning I have to have at least $25 in hand. If I do not, I cannot bid. Clockwise, not in turn order, but bidding is clockwise. Raise the bid or pass. This is really important. Passing does not preclude you from jumping back in. So if this were turn order, I put this up for bid. Christopher passes. Greg bids. Con passes. It comes back to me. I pass. Well, Christopher could jump back in if he so desires because Greg hasn't gotten back to Greg yet. Okay, so we keep going around and around until everyone has passed, and then they pay that amount back to the bank, and then they take the card into their supply. All right. You're going to immediately upgrade your player board for, here it says +3 colony limit. So, colony limit. So that would bump up like such. Now I could have 8 colonists work in my factory. So they all have special rule breakers. And I could, if I'm paying attention, immediately bump up my victory points if I so desired there. Okay? And if there is something that provided you with a factory of some sort. So for instance, say something like this, it provides one free research factory, which, if that were the case, then I could immediately reallocate colonists at that moment to the new factory if I so desired. Okay, pretty simple. After bidding's complete on a card, a player may put up another card for auction, provided they have the cash on hand to be able to put up another card. And they could do this, conceivably, I could put up all 4 cards for auction if I wish, as long as I have at least the minimum bid available at the time for bidding on the card. After the player elects to put no more upgrades up for auction, okay, whether I won this or not, I choose to not put any more up there. They may then move on to the next steps, and to speed up play, the next player then could move into their phase 5. So in that case, if I say I'm not going to put anything else up for auction, then conceivably, Greg, being player 2, could then choose to put things up for auction if he wishes. There is a thing called internalizing. If a player vocally says, I'm internalizing, what that means is, I'm done. I'm not going to bid. I'm not going to put anything else up for bid. I'm just done with this round as far as the bidding goes. You guys go ahead and do your bids. Don't worry about me. That's done just to be able to help speed up the game, which we will be doing today. All right. So after I say, hey, I'm not going to put anything else up for bid, at that point, I can choose to purchase factories. And the factories that I can purchase is dictated by what I have in my tableau and what upgrade cards that I have. I can then spend production cards to acquire factories allowed by my upgrade cards. Should note that ore and water are always purchasable. There is no, if this were my tableau, which it is at the beginning of the game, I can freely purchase water factories and ore factories for 10 and 20 bucks respectively, as you can see there. Okay? New chemical factories, which are these green ones, and you'll notice that it says on the back, you must have research production, and they require a minimum of 1 research card spent to be used in the purchase price of that. So if this were in my hand, I would then need to spend 47 other credits, but I must discard at least 1 research card to be able to get a new new chemicals factory. The first turn and the first turn only. Let's say I just did not draw really well at all. And let me give a good example of not drawing really well at all. Let's say this were my hand at the beginning of the game. So you'll notice that the total there, we got 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. I can't do anything with 19 bucks. In the first turn of the game, you can choose to discard your entire hand and purchase 1 new water factory. You are allowed to do that only on the first turn of the game. Okay? Now, the single most important part of this game, you never get change. If you overpay, you overpay. Not only that, but when purchasing factories, you may only buy in a single transaction multiples of a single type of factory. Then you may purchase separately another type of factory, so on and so forth. Again, because you do not get change for your production cards. Okay? So another way to put this is, the only things that you can pay for more than 1 at a time is multiple population, meaning multiple colonists, multiple robots. Also, multiple types of factories. So for instance, if this were my hand here, I could choose to, looking at this, and you can spend any mix if you want. So if I wanted to spend, go ahead, say 2 water factories, that's a total of 40 credits. So I could choose, say something like, to spend that for 40 credits there, and then, that being that, this would be my leftover hand. But I could, if maybe this was my only hand right here, and I didn't have any of these cards, and I wanted to buy a water factory, well, I'm spending 30 credits for a water factory that costs 20 bucks. Okay? You do not get change. So, You can only buy at a certain time, more than one population counter, more than one robot, or more than one regular factory, all of them of a single type. Have I made that point clear? Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, cool. Then you can purchase and assign colonists and robots after you're done purchasing factories. Meaning, hey, I have this new factory. I need a colonist. Okay, purchase that for $10. Let's go ahead and talk about robots real quick. So robots require, to be able to purchase, require this card right here. It costs a minimum bid of $50. This upgrade, it says, required to purchase robot counters, provides one free robot. Awesome. I would get one free robot with it. The advantage of robots as opposed to colonists. Colonists, the max amount of colonists that you can ever have is whatever your colonist level, your support limit is. However, you can have one robot. The max number of operable robots is equal to the max number of colonists. So right now I have 4 colonists, means I can have up to 4 operable robots. If I ever get to my max of 8 colonists, I could have 8 operable robots. I say operable. This is how many colonists I can ever have. I can have more robots, I just can't have more than that number ever working than however many humans I have employed. So right now I have 4 colonists, means I can have 4 robots employed, but I'm allowed to have 8 and 8. Okay? That makes sense? All right? Anything that's unmanned, we would flip that over like such and show that that is not actually being used. That's phase 5. Phase 6, check for victory. Anybody win? Anybody at 75 points? At this moment, this is where you're supposed to actually, let's say it were, yeah, we'll do like so. This is a more realistic setup-ish. We'll make it like so. There. As the game progresses, we may have something along the lines of this. So at this point, we need to calculate our victory points in phase 6. Operating factories. So in this case, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 points in operating factories. This is flipped over. It doesn't show victory points because it's not manned, so that's worth 4 points. Then any special factories, meaning any special factories like this, but if I don't have any of those, don't worry about it. And then upgrade card victory points, another 3. So I'm currently at 7 victory points. Did I win? Nope, I'm not at 75. If not, start a new round. And then, as I mentioned earlier, what round or what era cards are available is dictated by the highest number of victory points. So era 1 is less than 10 points, era 2 is 10 points, and era 3 depends on player count. And a 4-player, it is 40 victory points. Final scoring? There is none. Whoever has the most victory points, when somebody triggers it at 75, wins. If tied, the highest printed costs on all their upgrade cards and special factories, so that being worth 90 total there, would be the tiebreaker. A couple of quick little etiquette notes. You may not trade. You may not give away. You may not show your production cards. That is secret. You may not trade or give away anything else. And no side deals, no collusion, no playing as a team, da-da-da-da-da. There you go. And that, folks, is how you play Outpost.